to The Moment Show. In this video, I will be covering stories from r/detrans, a well-moderated subreddit for people questioning, desisting, or detransitioning. I will be protecting the identities of these posters since individuals in this community have been harassed when their stories have been discussed. This video's first post, titled, "Am I reading into this too much, or is this kind of insane? Detrans female." There's an organization in my city that helps trans people start their transition. That's great and all, but some of the advice on their website seems a little bit insane to me. There's a section about how to know if you're trans, and it says things like changes from puberty can be traumatic for trans people, being referred to as male/female can be uncomfortable, etc. Very generic stuff. I experienced all of these things, but I'm not trans. On top of this very generic advice on their website, one of my friends is involved with this organization, and they told me that there's absolutely no process someone has to go through to get on hormones. No counseling, no doctors, absolutely nothing. So, an 18-year-old can go to this organization, say that they're trans, and within maybe a month of being on a wait list, start hormones. I'm glad that there are resources readily available for trans people. But the lack of gatekeeping, for lack of a better word, on something that changes your body for life is a little bit scary. I don't know if this organization was around when I started my transition, but I had to have like 4 appointments with a doctor before I was prescribed hormones. That was unfortunately not enough, but at least it was something. I don't know, but I feel like such a life-changing decision shouldn't be allowed to be made so quickly. I would love to hear others' thoughts/opinions on this. From the comments, one person adds, "Desisted. Trans dogma really shifted the goalposts of transness to a very typical teenage experiences. It would be funny if it wasn't so blatantly indoctrination." And the original poster replies, "I never really thought about it this way, as it being indoctrination, but you're right. I was told it's normal to feel uncomfortable going through puberty and getting used to my body, but eventually I would get used to it. I was never given any resources or counseling to deal with my traumatic experiences with puberty. I was basically told to suck it up and get used to it like everyone else. I still hated my body at 18/19 years old, and that's around the time when the trans community really started blowing up on social media. I read about all these completely normal experiences thinking they were exclusive to trans people, and well, here I am now, angry that no one helped me when I was young. Angry because my mother didn't take me seriously or think twice when I told her that I wanted to get surgery to remove my organs. My parents only pushed counseling on me when I was determined to transition, and it was too late. Sorry about the vent, but I'm really just thinking about all this for the first time now." A desisted female adds, "Par for the course, unfortunately. A large vocal part of trans rhetoric involves pathologizing normal experiences and spreading lies that cis people never experience gender or sex dysphoria. Sounds like that organization isn't doing its due diligence. They'd rather pander to trans community demands, stop gatekeeping transition, trans kids are dying, then make sure people are interested in transitioning are actually informed about the process." And the original poster replies, "Oh, absolutely. It's crazy that these trans people don't realize how much harm is done when someone who isn't trans transitions. I'm going slightly off the rails with this, but there was a guy I met this summer. He was questioning his gender because he liked cosplaying female characters, and lots of people told him he'd be a cute girl. He was also pressured to start transitioning by trans people on the internet. Long story short, he thanked me so many times and was so happy that we met because after we talked, he said to me that he's definitely not trans and he just didn't really understand what being trans even meant. He was so close to being pressured into transition, and that is so scary and effed up that something like that is even happening. It makes me wonder how many people are actually being pressured into this. Detrans female. They're probably operating under informed consent. I went into Planned Parenthood and got testosterone in 30-ish minutes. And the original poster replies, that makes sense, but it's still kind of insane to me. I don't think 18-year-olds should be allowed to make that decision. But I suppose I'm biased because I made that decision at 19, thinking it was absolutely the right and only decision for me, and now I regret it. I don't know if I would have been willing to explore other options back then, like counseling, but I almost wish I was forced to do so. A detrans male comments, sounds a lot harder there than it is in the US. In the US, you can walk into a clinic and walk out 30 minutes later with hormones on the same day. No wait times at all. And the original poster replies, wow, that's honestly pretty absurd. I think the only reason there are wait times here is because there are so many people trying to access these services, which are only available by appointment. The doctors who specialize with trans patients are always incredibly busy as well. But there seems to be wait lists for pretty much any medical services here, especially since COVID started. Then a D-trans male adds, that makes sense. I think you're right. Most US states will have plenty of gender clinics available at any given time. My own region had like 4, and that's just nearby me, so if you failed to be able to go to one, you could just go to one of the others. I remember when I first went, I called one of them and they said I couldn't come in for a couple of weeks there. So I tried another one and they were open to see me the next day. And the original poster replies to that. Wow, that's pretty crazy. I only know of 2 gender clinics here in the city I live in. And there are only a handful of gender specialists as well. When I was actively participating in the trans community, people were always so upset about all of the waiting involved with transitioning. When I first started transitioning, there were only 3 doctors people were talking about. I know there's at least a few more now, but still not many. And someone who questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning comments on this. When did those gender clinics pop up? Like, are they built past around 2010 or so? I'm curious because I wonder if the only doctors for gender clinics are very recently educated, or they come from places like endocrinology, urology, etc. Like, imagine a doctor who doesn't specialize in gender problems or nor trauma informed, giving trans kids and adults advice and prescriptions. And a D-trans male adds, they don't give much advice. From what I was able to gather when I was researching and when I went, they weren't really able to discuss anything with you. Their only function is to distribute the drugs. If you say you need them because you're trans, then you've basically filled the only requirement and the conversation is finished after that. I didn't get the impression that the person I saw was very highly qualified. To be fair, you wouldn't have to be to do this job. All he does is hand over needles and show you how to use them. Anyone who has a first aid class might be able to do the same. I don't know when the clinics opened, but I had the impression that the industry exploded in the last 10 years in response to high demand. Most medical practices in the US are privately owned and operated. So what happens is 1 or 2 people with a license of some sort will just buy a spot in a strip mall or such and just start doing their thing. The place I went to was like this. I think it had 1 doctor, 1 nurse, and a receptionist. They were recently opened. And a D-trans female comments on the original post. I got it the first day I walked in too. I was really expecting there to be at least some counseling and question about my history, but no, they didn't ask or care. Next post, titled, I Don't Want to Live. Detrans. I don't know how much longer I can take this. I should have never taken testosterone. I should have never transitioned. I feel like absolute S. I really was just confused and felt like if I was a man, everything bad in my life would change. I want to keep living, I really do, but it's very difficult. My mom tells me everything will be okay, and we are going to see my endocrinologist in a few weeks. But after reading the horrific things I have online about some changes being irreversible, it takes my hope and will to live away. I can't even count the number of times I've broken down into tears in the past few days. Sad emoticon. From the comments, a D-trans person replies, "It's okay. You haven't ruined your future. Some changes are irreversible, but there's so much room for diversity. You'll be just fine in a few years. While your body won't be the same as it was before, or grow into something it might have been, so many things and it keep changing throughout your life, as does your life itself, and your priorities, the things that matter. It hurts so much and feels so bad now, because this is a fresh trauma that you're grieving. You're making sense of what you've lost, or think you've lost, and the doors you feel are closed to you now. It won't matter as much in a few years. Your mind will get tired of obsessing over this loss. You'll start healing, because life will go on. Things that have nothing to do with your gender or your transition will keep happening. And while you adapt to these new phases, your transition will fall back into the background of things. Eventually, you'll just be you again, in a life that is quite different from what you have right now. There are doors you can't even imagine yet that you'll be walking through. There's space for you in this world, and you can still be a perfectly happy person just as you are, with time and healing. It won't hurt forever." A desisted person comments, "I've suddenly gotten 3 issues that heavily affected my quality of life on a daily basis. Age 19 to 21, I'm now 27. Each time I thought it was the end of the world. Each time I would sink into a depression or try to deny that these health problems might not go away. I've gotten used to them. The problems themselves haven't gone away, but have lessened, and I hardly notice or think about them. Thank God I accepted them and moved on with my life instead of lingering on them. I've really enjoyed 8 years of my life despite them. Suicide is robbing yourself of so much joy." Desisted male, "How old were you when you started it, T? And how old when you stopped?" The original poster replies, "I was 18 when I started. I am now 20. The trans female comments, "There are some things that are irreversible that you have to eventually accept. It's hard and it's saddening. The first few steps into detransitioning are rough, but you're a human being that offers more to the world than just a body. Be strong, heart." A D-trans female comments, "I would love to say something hopeful, but I'm in a similar situation right now, so I think I can understand. It's been a year off T. Everything just keeps getting worse. It doesn't mean it's like this for everyone, though. It makes sense to give it some time, to keep going as long as you can. It won't be easy. It probably will never be fully okay. But it will most likely get bearable at some point and with some effort. Our brains can adapt to a lot of terrible things. Wishing you strength." And a D-trans female person comments, "You're going to be okay. This is difficult and scary, but you have the rest of your life to live as a woman. It's okay to have a lot of intense feelings about your transition and detransition, and it will get easier with time. Nobody moves through this world without making a mistake." Next post, titled, "Healthy Ways to Cope with Dysphoria Without Transitioning, My Comprehensive List," by a D-trans female individual. As someone who struggled with dysphoria for most of my life, I've been compiling a list of some alternative coping mechanisms for when I start questioning or feeling overwhelmed. In some cases, dysphoria and the desire to transition can stem from a multitude of areas, including trauma, feeling disconnected from people/family/society, a lack of sense of self, and negative body image. I wish that my therapist had encouraged other methods for coping with dysphoria before jumping to transition. Feel free to comment things that have helped you. Remember, it's okay to be wrong about being trans. It's okay to grow and learn and change. You may feel shame for changing your mind, but remember the people who love you just want you to be happy. It's okay to leave behind things that are no longer serving you. It's okay to grieve or mourn lost time or this life you thought you'd have. It's part of the healing process and getting you where you need to be. Do activities that take your mind off of yourself, including work, watch a movie, read a book, draw, or focus on a hobby. Instead of focusing on yourself, put your energy into a story or a fulfilling project. Make new milestones and goals for yourself. Take a break from the internet and social media. It's hard not to compare yourself with others' transitions, bodies, and lives. Particularly avoid online trans groups and entertainers. Being in an echo chamber with constant validation can perpetuate these feelings, making you feel worse. Unfollow social media accounts and remove yourself from people/spaces that trigger these feelings. Try reconnecting more with people in person in non-queer focused spaces. Find a new community. A big draw to the LGBT space is a huge community of support. Try finding this elsewhere, with book clubs, dance, volunteering, sports, art, yoga, outdoor activities, meetups, etc. Try to find new spaces where you feel like you fit in and are improving yourself in a healthy way. This may take some exploration and a few tries. Talk to a therapist or close friend about it. Be sure to explain you're not interested in pursuing transition, but would still like to talk through these feelings. You may find this could mean working through trauma or self-esteem pains. Getting on the right medication for other issues, for me anxiety and depression, made a world of difference. Repair your relationship with your current body. Cook for yourself. Find exercise that you enjoy. Shower with nice smelling soaps. You don't have to love your body, but some goals are to be healthy, appreciative, or neutral towards it. Don't force yourself to try and look and act like your birth sex if it feels unnatural. Some people are more naturally feminine or masculine. So don't force yourself to subscribe to gender norms that you don't feel comfortable for you. There's no way to be male or female. You're just you. Go outside. Being around nature with fresh air can help to ground you. If this isn't always an option, try watching bushcraft/primitive building and cooking channels on YouTube. It can help you reconnect to simply being human. Going outside, even in a city or town, can help ground you to the real world outside of your mind and online spaces. Read and watch Detransition Stories on bad dysphoria days. They show other people who have struggled like you and feel more clarity accepting themselves now. Hearing rational explanations and discussion can help you stop romanticizing transition. From the comments, a desisted female adds, absolutely great list, very comprehensive. You mentioned exercise, but I really want to emphasize how important that was for me as a first step. I didn't get into it because I wanted to overcome dysphoria. I started exercising just because I wanted to get in shape. And as a side effect, my dysphoria drastically decreased. I stopped looking at my body as a shell that I had no control over, something whose appearance was the most important thing, and started looking at it as a tool, something to get stronger and be proud of. The whole getting off the internet and finding a new community thing is huge as well. And the original poster replies to this comment, thanks. Yes, exercise has helped me a ton too. You're spot on that it gives you a healthy means of feeling more in control of your body. Makes me feel way stronger and more in tune with my body. Someone questioning their own gender transition comments. Get addicted to drugs, video games, cigarettes. The original post replies, I definitely understand why these are used, and I'm sometimes guilty, lol. But often you're going from one method of escapism to another. The goal with these coping methods is not to escape the things you're feeling, but to create a better life for yourself that you actually want to live. I keep this chapter of my life like a book on my shelf, not something locked away in the basement. It's something we will always have to live with and cope with. And if we can accept them, then maybe they won't be haunting us. It's hard, but it's possible. And I promise it can get better. Someone who questioned a while but didn't end up transitioning, sex/porn and food, happens to so many people. Good coping mechanisms got the win, but they don't feel great long. That's why most of us choose these quick, easy addictions over hard work, and transition over therapy/quick fixes. Next post, titled, I love this community. When I was trans, I avoided this community like it was a plague because of how much the trans community demonized it. It was all that place that's full of transphobes, and it's a hate sub, so on and so forth. But in my experience here has been nothing but pleasant. Like seriously, y'all are probably some of the kindest people I've met on this site. I see absolutely zero hate here, just detrans people providing positivity and help towards other detrans people. From the comments, questioning own gender transition. Well, we probably were trans or about to be trans in this sub, so of course we don't have hate for people who transition. IMO, in my opinion, this sub is very helpful when in period of doubt. A lot of people before transition should visit both trans subs and this one, to see both sides of the coin. Trans subreddits can be very pushy when it comes to doubts, like you'll see when you take hormones, you'll know if it's for you. Or all trans have their doubts, it's only a phase. So, to conclude this comment, I'd like to thank this sub for their help. I didn't transition and I'm quite glad I didn't, because it would have been for the wrong reasons, and it would have made me quite unhappy in the long run. Next post, titled, I feel like I should have more changes 1 year off T. A D-trans female posts. Everyone tells me to just be patient, but this is driving me insane not knowing if I'll ever feel normal again. My body hair still grows way too fast and dark. My sex drive is almost non-existent, and my orgasms barely feel like anything. My BPD has gotten worse ever since I went off. I'm getting UTIs constantly. My face still reads as male to me, but I don't know if my body fat has fully distributed or what. I know the voice is irreversible, but I've heard some say it lightens within a year off T, and I don't think I've experienced that at all. I just have horrible buzzing and ear clogging when I try to practice my voice. I'm convinced testosterone did something to my brain too, because I barely had any energy to do anything, and my ADHD is completely out of control. I never brought up the concern of having ADHD to my psychiatrist until I was a year and a half off T. I'm losing my mind. I'm 22 and I feel like my body is entering menopause. I feel like I'll never be normal or seen as attractive to anyone ever again. Is there even any point in trying to fix this if I'll always feel broken? From the comments, a D-trans person comments, what tea product did you use? I was on a product that was injected every 3 months, and so the tea stayed in my system for a long time. Surprisingly, I had abnormal T and estrogen levels even almost a year after I quit. And it was only after a year when my hormonal balance returned. So, it really took a long time for quitting to have very noticeable effects. Not sure how long you are on T, but if you are on it for several years, it'll take several years for things to reverse. And some things won't reverse at all, of course. Personally, I've noticed changes in my face and body 4+ years after quitting. Another D-trans person replies, 1. Mental and health and neurological sides. Testosterone has antidepressant effects. That's where the T high comes from in the case of FDM. Estrogen and hormonal imbalances are associated having the opposite effect, to my knowledge. I'm not a medical professional, however, and have not researched or read about this said topic recently as much. Too low estrogen makes me, personally, very tired and alleviates other depression systems as well. ADHD, in turn, can intensify the emotions like there are no breaks, no realistic proportions, when contrasted with the things or situations that cause the emotion. There are cognitive tools to deal with those. Estrogen also intensifies feelings and moods, which was one of the things that sold me to tea when I was younger, because trauma and any kind of strong emotional spike was too much for me to comprehend and handle, making even positive ones turning into negative ones. 2. Physical symptoms and HRT. You should consult an endocrinologist for hormonal issues and to check if your body is producing its own natural hormones within a healthy range. Assuming you didn't have surgery, have surgically your ovaries removed. If you did, you need to be on estrogen or testosterone HRT, of course, as your body doesn't produce hormones itself anymore. And you absolutely need to be on some sort of synthetic hormonal replacement therapy in that case. He thins the vaginal walls and the amount of lubrication, causing atrophy and leading to other issues. Local estrogen cream and insertable pills of sort can restore it and help with the UTI. It can take years for the body to sort things out, and I wish you have a chance to keep a track of your health and proper medical care, and treat the symptoms and causes by a well-educated professional. A therapy would help with the body image, self-esteem, anxiety, and possible traumas from medical and social gender transition complications too. You're only 22. I can assure you that the closer you get to your 30s, the less you start to give a crap about what others think about you. Life is too short and filled with more interesting and enjoyable things than concentrate on desperately trying to police or manipulate someone else's thoughts based on observing you in a passing moment. The brain doesn't fully mature till 25 years. Like some sort of textbook example, after that age, things slowly begin to click in their places for me personally. Having variety of different social circles and meeting all sorts of different kinds of people has also helped me to figure out the values in life and what actually matters and for whom. It breaks echo chambers, gives me more perspective and views. Also, I don't know what your definition of normal is, but I've learned that every person has features or traits that are not considered ideal or stereotypical, in different kind of combinations and amounts. If you think that you're the only alien here, you're not. It just manifests in individuals in different ways, and abnormality doesn't equal, always, a bad thing, in a dangerous or harmful way. If you're trying to chase some sort of mold of normal to shape yourself into, I don't personally think you'll find one. The sex-related stereotypes, behavior, and appearance-related change whenever they've run their course of purpose, whether it's social, cultural, linked to beauty industry or capitalism, etc. What's considered feminine and stereotypically action socially acceptable for only for females to wear, like color pink and skirts, to be regressive AF, has changed during short Western history. If you limit your personality and self-expression by only accepting yourself to be desirable, acceptable, and normal, by trying to succeed by performing all the stereotypes to fill the bingo of a normal woman, you'll only set yourself up to an impossible, inhuman task. You're a human who happens to have certain bodily functions and physical limitations, not a performance for someone else's enjoyment. Try to concentrate on doing more stuff that gives you positive experiences. Want to wear certain kinds of shoes? Do it. Want a certain kind of name because you like it? Get it. Next post. Is this just bad therapy haunting me? A detrans male posts. When I was on the brink of my short-lived transition, I remember telling my therapist, I feel like I have a split personality or something. She responded, you don't have a split personality, but repression can cause that to happen. I remember feeling so scared by that at the time, and that fear was part of what compelled me to making the wrong choice in taking hormones. I still think about it sometimes, and the fear comes coming flooding back. Am I just in denial? Am I repressing myself by stopping HRT? Is my personality going to split somewhere down the line? Next post, titled Any and All Reassurances. I heard a recording of someone who had a voice exactly like mine, and their voice was so expressive, and I got so sad. I don't know if I'll ever be able to speak like that again, even with surgery. I don't know if my voice is going to revert. I don't know if I have any hope. I wasn't a religious person before transitioning, but I have been praying every single day and night now. I want a miracle to happen. I wish I could go back in time 6 months and stop myself. I want to sing. I want to yell. I want to speak. I want to be normal. I want my life back. This is just a stream of consciousness at this point to keep me from breaking down. My passaggio at E4 now, so I can't speak higher no matter how much I try. Even before my voice dropped, though, my voice still cracked around that region. But it just took more vocal force to make it happen. Did I ever speak higher? My top range is still the same. It's just falsetto and thin. I just want my voice to revert. My phone is lagging, so I can't type anymore. Next post, titled Question, by someone questioning their own gender transition. Do you think it's more harmful to the potentially trans person to be A, encouraged to love themselves how they are, not going along with the new name, not starting medical treatment, etc., and they end up being trans, or B, to support the transition and start medical treatment, etc., and they end up not being trans? From the comments, this is male. A lot of the trans community has this obsession with transitioning as early as possible. Since all the trans people wish they did that, this is a terrible idea. It's always better to delay. Transitioning earlier will have more negative side effects, especially if done before puberty. Given the experimental nature of the treatment, it's much better to wait and see. You can always change your mind later on if you really want to. Now someone questioning their own gender transition asks, how much time should someone wait? And a desisted male comments, I'd say until long-term studies are done, which none are. I'd compromise by saying when someone is 21 and mature enough to handle decisions. Someone desisted comments, I'd encourage rigorous therapy, not with anyone who calls themselves trans-affirming, and I would never encourage medical transition. I'd want this person to do extensive research into the procedures and drugs associated with transition before even considering that. I would strongly suggest they avoid any and all online trans communities. I'd still accept them no matter what they decide. Unlike the trans community, I don't turn my back on someone for not doing what I wish them to do. A desisted male comments, I think encouraging to accept your body how it should always be the first option. Why should we encourage medicalization of people's bodies without knowing for sure that this is only the last resort and nothing else will work? Desisted female. B is more harmful. It will make you a lifelong patient in the medical field and generally F's with your physical health. People often get hooked on transitioning because the TQ plus community is a cult. They don't only give affirmation but put them on a higher social ladder if they do say they are trans, and if they do start their transition. They will let you speak over other people and will even attack people for you or with you. There will not be a moment when you are not going to be talking about being transgender or queer. And if there is a moment you are not, you'll be blaming other people for being boring cisheads. This will easily become an addiction for you, the affirmation and the victim status. With A, if the person ends up really being transitioned, they would just be able to start socially transitioning and then medically, if they decide that's what they want. They will learn to love themselves for who they actually are, they'll learn healthy coping methods, they'll have time to step away from any narrative to get to the root of why they feel like they do. At least that's what I think of when you say encourage to love themselves as they are. It's a lot of work on yourself, and it's not a checklist either. No, I wasn't abused. I don't think I've internalized homophobia slash misogyny. I don't think blah blah blah. You actually have to learn to love you. A desisted male comments, well, first things should always be encouraging therapy to root out the source of one's dysphoria and put in effort to resolve those issues without transitioning. Red flags should be taken into account and transition should be discouraged if present. Different people have different ideas of what counts as red flags, but my own are no dysphoria slash only euphoria, social dysphoria over body dysphoria, overly focused on gender and social stereotypes, trauma, porn addiction, and this is the critical one, wanting to be trans slash not cis. The last one is often a key separator between those who are generally trans versus those who are trans as an aesthetic slash identity. One specific green flag, which some may disagree with me, is sex slash body dysphoria originating before puberty. If one has body dysphoria prior to puberty and it doesn't desist or gets worse into puberty, then that's likely genuine sex dysphoria. Personally, telling someone to love their body isn't helpful when they're trans or not, as the advice is super vague. More concrete advice would be giving specific diet and exercise recommendations to promote more feminine or masculine body shape. If their dysphoria is alleviated from that, then they'll realize they're just gender nonconforming. Socially trans regrets medical transition. This person adds, it depends on the trans person. The real problem is that we as humanity don't have the psychology knowledge to be sure which person needs what at such early stage, and especially give the actual support to need the least amount of intervention possible. Now this video's last post, titled, Impact of Parental Relationship on Gender Dysphoria. This is by a desisted female. I'm around 20 years old, and I started feeling gender dysphoria slash discomfort with being a woman around the time I hit puberty. I have not tried to transition, but I was feeling some intense frustration and discomfort with being female. My parents have a very dysfunctional relationship. My mom was a stay at home mom, and my dad was the breadwinner. And my dad would often insult my mom for not working slash being lazy, and my mom felt worthless because she didn't work, and her role was cooking, cleaning, and taking care of me. My mom was also quite destabilized, and when I hit puberty, I would often overemphasize the danger of sex. Oh, the mom would often overemphasize the danger of sex, and she made it seem really bad and scary and wrong. I was wondering if anyone else feels like dysfunctional dynamics with their parents contributed to feelings of gender dysphoria and confusion. I was wondering how common this sort of thing is with the trans slash detrans youth. From the comments, a detrans male comments, I'm reticent to blame my personal dysfunctions on my mother. She raised me well and did the best she could. More than, in fact. But I do kind of relate to your post and feel she was perhaps contributing factor to how I perceived sex, gender, and my relationship with it all. Having been raised in a misogynistic household by her father, my mother grew up to be a feminist in the 60s and 70s and was quite vocal at times about her views on men. I had three sisters, and when any of us misbehaved, we would get disciplined. But my bad behavior was often attributed to being a man. Of course, you did that because you're a man. You won't be able to understand this because you're a man. I definitely learned to associate shame and ignorance with maleness, and I brought that with me into adulthood. She would always immediately decry any comment related to women as sexist, but she would often casually disparage men. I remember being a bit older and calling her out on it. She said she understood that she did. She did it, but disagreed it was a problem and refused to elaborate further. I definitely grew up with a very negative view of men. My mother was certainly not the only influencing factor in this, as I've always been especially sensitive towards this issue, and I saw it emphasized everywhere. I struggled because my idea of what a man was completely different to how I viewed myself, and I believe that was the only way my adolescent brain was able to compartmentalize all of this, was to dissociate completely from the harmful negativity and convince myself that I was really a woman. It definitely did help that I'd always been a quiet and shy little boy, but one who enjoyed decorating himself and showing off in his sister's more elaborate clothing, or being the princess to be rescued during play. I guess everything all came together to form the wrong conclusions. Shrug emoji. Ed, thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more content. Have a good day.